wouldn't understand, Daniel. I said this while watching the familiar look of skepticism cross my friend's face as he sat across from me in the cozy corner of the coffee house. He always thought I was too cautious, that I overthought everything, but he never really knew why I was like this. Daniel lifted his coffee cup, that usual hint of mischief still in his eyes. He told me I seriously needed to relax and that all of this was probably just my overactive imagination. I took a deep breath and slowly turned my mug in my hands. I told him I wanted to tell him a story, my story. After that, he could decide for himself. Daniel leaned back in his chair and agreed, but reminded me that he didn't believe in ghosts or paranormal nonsense. I told him this wasn't a ghost story. It was worse than that. It was about a kind of fear that is born inside your own home when everything that once felt safe suddenly turns against you. And then I began. It happened in the fall of 2017. At the time, I was finishing college and working a part-time job. My parents had gone to Canada to help my sister after she'd just had her first baby. They were gone for 3 months, and I stayed behind to look after the house. Our house was located in the old part of the city, an area known for historic buildings and narrow streets. My grandfather had built it back in the 1960s. It was a solid brick house with high ceilings, large windows, and that strange kind of silence that only old houses have. The first few weeks were great. I had total freedom. Friends came over, I stayed up late, and I ate whenever I wanted. Then something happened. One night in October, the wind outside was strong. Tree branches scraped against the windows. I was upstairs in my room working on an assignment. It was close to 11 at night when I heard a sound coming from the ground floor. It sounded like something heavy being dragged and then dropped back into place. I knew old houses made noises, but this felt different. Right after that sound, the temperature in my room dropped instantly. It felt like a wave of cold air had rolled in through the walls. I tried to ignore it and focus on my work. Then I heard another sound from the hallway outside my room. It didn't sound like footsteps. It sounded like paper being slowly torn or like dry, cracked skin rubbing together. Suddenly, I felt it. Someone was calling my name. It wasn't a voice. That's what made it worse. It felt like a sensation inside my head, like my mind was being touched by something else. Something that knew exactly who I was. My body went numb. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. Then the sounds changed. Footsteps started on the stairs. Our staircase had 17 steps. I'd counted them as a kid. That night, I heard 18. I locked my door and stuffed a towel underneath it. The footsteps stopped right outside. Then there was a knock. It wasn't a normal knock. There were 2 knocks, then a long pause. 1 knock, another pause, and then 4 more. It felt like a pattern, like something trying and failing to copy how humans knock. In the light spilling from under the door, I saw a shadow. It wasn't stable. It stretched, shrunk, and changed shape like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to look like. I finally turned on all the lights and opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the smell wasn't. It smelled like rotten wood and damp decay mixed with something sharp, like burnt electrical wires. The smell followed me through the house. When I reached the living room, I noticed the curtain moving. There was no wind. All the doors and windows were locked. On the floor beneath the curtain were wet marks. They weren't footprints. They were too long and too distorted, almost like oversized handprints.
I tried calling the police, but there was no signal. My phone was fully charged but completely useless. Then I heard it again, from the kitchen. The refrigerator door was opening and closing. The refrigerator had been broken for weeks. There was no power. Still, the door moved. Every time it opened, a faint blue light spilled out from inside. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then everything stopped. Behind me, from the top of the stairs, I heard my name clearly. Ethan. It wasn't my mother's voice. It wasn't anyone's voice. It was inside my head, and it said that it wasn't time yet. That was when I ran. I spent the night at a friend's place. The next day I returned with the police. They found nothing. The doors were locked. There were no marks. The refrigerator was broken. They said it was stress, isolation, maybe a vivid hallucination. When my parents came back, I told them everything. That's when I learned something. My grandfather hadn't died in that house, but the night before his death, he had stayed there. My grandmother once admitted that he heard things that night too. Before he built the house, there had been another structure on that land, an old abandoned building. When it was torn down, they found something beneath it, a stone chest. Inside were bones, carved stones, and a journal written in symbols no one understood. My grandfather buried it again, deep into the foundation of the new house. He believed some things were meant to stay buried. We sat in silence. I told Daniel I didn't know what it was, but once something knows you, it doesn't forget. We paid the bill and stepped outside. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Daniel was standing there, watching. Behind him, between the trees, I thought I saw something tall and thin, a shadow. I blinked. It was gone. That night, I turned on every light in my apartment. I checked every door and every window. As I lay down, I heard it again, that dry, scraping sound. Maybe it was just the building settling. Maybe. But the most terrifying thing about fear isn't that it comes back. It's that you never truly know if it ever left.
I had been suppressing this story inside me for many years. Today, perhaps, I finally have the courage to shape it into words. My name is Sarah, and this incident took place in the autumn of 2019, when my parents had gone on a month-long tour of Europe, and I was left alone to look after their two-story house, located in a quiet, old neighborhood of our own city. The first week of freedom was wonderful. The house was completely mine. I stayed up late into the night, went downstairs to the kitchen without fear to make snacks, and kept the lights on in every room. This house, which we had bought 10 years earlier, had always felt like a peaceful, safe refuge, until that night. It was a Wednesday night. The weather had suddenly changed, and there was a sharp chill in the air for the first time. Tree branches were scraping against the windows. I had been feeling a strange uneasiness since the afternoon, as if someone was watching me. I dismissed it as fatigue and loneliness. In the evening, I turned on all the lights on the lower floor and went to my bedroom, which was on the upper floor. Around 11 at night, I heard a sound from downstairs. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the kind of ordinary, almost everyday sound that old wooden floors often make. Kirk! As if some weight had shifted from one place to another. I froze. It was the same sound wood makes when it contracts with changes in temperature. It's an old house, I told myself. It's just reacting to the weather. I tried to focus back on my book. Then a second sound came. Another Kirk, but clearer than the first. And this time, it wasn't from downstairs. It came from the direction of the stairs. My ears immediately recognized the direction. My heart began to pound. The stairs. The only path leading to my room.
I picked up my phone. No messages. I tried to calm myself. It's just the house. The wood is settling. The wind is blowing. This is all physics. I put the book aside and listened carefully. And then, after a moment of complete silence, it came again. But this time it wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. A clear, deep certainty that I was not alone in that room. It wasn't imagination. It was physical, like the air pressure had changed, like something large had silently inhaled and pulled the air of the room into itself. Goosebumps rose on my skin. My body went numb. I held my breath. I looked at my bedroom door, which was slightly open. The hallway outside was completely dark. I was certain, absolutely, terrifyingly certain, that if I looked into that darkness, something would be looking back at me. Then, from the hallway outside my door, a new sound came. A soft, dragging sound, as if someone barefoot was slowly placing one foot in front of the other on the floor. Shh, shh. My blood turned cold. This wasn't wood settling. This was someone, something, on the upper floor, in the hallway. My body went into a primal fight or flight response. I slid under my bed, shaking, clutching my phone to my chest. I turned on the screen to dial. My finger hovered over the number 9, trembling, but I didn't press it. If I spoke, it would hear me. If I turned on a light, it would see me. An irrational but overwhelming belief gripped me, that silence and darkness were my only protection. The dragging sound stopped. The entire house fell back into deep silence, but this silence was heavier than before, almost alive. Then came a new, incredibly faint sound, a very soft jingle from the door hinge, as if someone was lightly touching it with their fingers. Something inside me broke. I crawled out from under the bed and silently searched for a hiding place in the corner of my room. I crouched behind the wardrobe, pulling my knees to my chest, covering my mouth with trembling hands. I prayed that it wouldn't find me. And then the sounds started again. But now they were downstairs, clear footsteps descending the stairs. With each step came a soft krr, as if a weight was moving down one step at a time. I held my breath and counted. 1, 2, 3. It continued. 15 steps. Then, on the wooden floor of the lower level, the dragging sound returned. It was moving toward the kitchen.
I gathered my courage and crawled toward my phone. I dialed my neighbor, Mrs. Anderson, a widow who often stayed awake late at night. The phone rang. No answer. Tears filled my eyes. Then, from downstairs, a new sound came. It was the sound of my wardrobe door, the old, heavy wooden door that sometimes opened on its own. But this wasn't just the sound of it opening. It was opening and closing. Crack, thud. Then again, crack, thud, as if someone was repeatedly, deliberately testing it. I grabbed my father's old golf club lying in the corner of the room. It was my only weapon. I stared at the door. Then all the sounds stopped. This sudden silence, after an hour of noise, was almost as terrifying. I stayed there, breathing shallowly, waiting for the sounds to return. They didn't. For half an hour, I didn't move. Then slowly, I closed my bedroom door and stuffed a towel under it to block any light. I messaged my brother, who was in a different time zone. "Something is wrong here. I'm scared." He replied immediately. "What happened? Are you okay?" My hands were shaking as I typed. I heard things that shouldn't be there. It came upstairs, to my door. He came online. "Is the door locked? Did you call anyone?" I replied, "Everything is locked. I'm scared it will hear me." We kept messaging like that. That thin connection kept me from slipping into madness. He told me to keep talking, to stay logical. He said it might be a burglar who had broken into the house. At 4 in the morning, when the first birds began chirping outside, I gathered my courage. Holding the golf club, I slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty. I walked barefoot to avoid making noise. I looked down the stairs. There was no one. I began descending slowly, pausing on each step to listen. All the lights downstairs were still on. Everything was exactly as I had left it. Books on the shelves, blanket on the couch. Then my eyes fell on the kitchen floor. I stopped. My breath caught. On the floor, where I had cooked earlier that evening, there were 3 large wet marks. They were clearly footprints, but not human. They were long and thin, almost 10 inches in length, with pointed ends instead of toes. They looked like they were made of water or some other liquid, starting from the middle of the floor and leading to the kitchen sink. And the faucet, it was slowly dripping. My legs nearly gave out. I turned, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. The police came. They searched the entire house.
They found nothing. All doors and windows were locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry. When I tried to show them the marks, they were gone. The floor was dry, as if they had never been there. One officer said, "You might have dreamed it. Isolation in old buildings can sometimes do that." Another older officer said, "Sometimes houses just make noises." But I knew what I had heard, what I had felt, was real. Those wet footprints are forever etched into my mind. I never stayed alone there again after that night. When my parents returned, I told them everything. They took my experience seriously, perhaps because they saw the fear on my face. A few months later, they moved out of that house. They never said it was because of the incident, but I know. Even today, whenever I'm in an old house and hear wooden sounds at night, a cold shiver runs down my spine. I've learned that the most terrifying kind of fear isn't the one that comes from outside. It's the fear that grows within your own walls, the certainty that your sanctuary has turned against you, and that whatever climbed those stairs that night, maybe it never left. Maybe it's just waiting for the lights to go out again, and for the house to belong to it once more. Because houses have memories,